Hey, and a very warm welcome to the Into the LightWeb podcast with me, your hostess, Joanna Hunter, metaphysical teacher, spiritual life and business coach, published author, and the high priestess of the LightWeb, a spiritual technology that will change your life. This is the place to be to talk everything under the LightWeb, from consciousness, relationships, to money, to spiritual business, and everything in between. Hey, and a warm welcome to the Into the LightWeb podcast with me, your hostess, Joanna Hunter. And this is a solo episode. We're going to be talking about source and void energy in this episode. I am so excited to have this conversation with you. So I channel a collective consciousness called Skylar. They number the millions and they are the unincarnated members of my soul tribe. So what Skylar teaches is that we all arrive into this world, into Earth, in soul tribes, that we converge in big tribes of souls, and that this planet has 13 separate soul tribes. Every time that we go through a process of ascension on this planet, it is the coming together of one of the tribes. So the tribes come together, they coalesce and become one, which we're all taught by sages and gurus of old, that we are all one. Well, within the soul tribes, it happens that all the soul tribes come together as one, and then it all happens that all of the soul tribes can come together as one as well, so all 13 to come together. But when humanity ascends, one of these tribes coalesces as a oneness, and as they coalesce and become a oneness, then the planet has a giant jump in consciousness, because what happens is a sharing of all of those souls' experiences. So in some of those lifetimes that we've had, we've played the role of maybe victim, and then in another lifetime we have played the role of victimizer, and as we come together there is this complete understanding of both sides of it, source and void. We understand the situation fully because we've seen it from both angles. And as we bring that knowledge together as a oneness with everybody in our soul tribe, all of us share the information and knowledge, and then as we break apart again and create, new souls are created, and those souls start to incarnate on Earth. The consciousness of Earth rises as a kind of byproduct of that, which is really amazing. So that is how they've described ascension process to us. It is a great learning of being able to see from a much bigger perspective, of where we can see all the angles of one issue perhaps. So the part of the teachings of Skylar are from the Codex of Light, and in the Codex of Light they teach source and void energy. So everything on this planet is source energy. And then we also experience the void, which is the absence of source. So first of all, source is the primary energy, and then if you take a space in which you remove source from that, then you get the void. And the void is where we experience all negative emotions, all negative feeling things, and lack is all experienced in the void. All positive emotions and all connected emotions and abundance is experienced as source energy. And so source energy creates the scale, or this source and void creates the scale or the spectrum of energy for all of us in the universe. So all of us here, we're all experiencing either source energy or void energy, and we're somewhere on that spectrum. So when life is very hard and very difficult, and we're really stressing about a lot of things in our lives, we are more towards the end of the spectrum where it is void energy. And when things are going really great and things are going really awesome for us, then we are more towards the source end of the spectrum. What determines where we are on the spectrum of source and void? Well, ultimately it is us. In the early days of your life, you will believe that it is a complete random event, and maybe perhaps your parents, when you grow up, taught you that it was also a random event, that happiness was a random event, that good fortune was a random event, that bad things happened to good people, and it was also a random event. It really comes down to everything being vibration and frequency. So our thoughts are creating our vibration and frequency, and we have many thoughts every single day. We have scientists say that we have up to 60,000 thoughts every single day. And we can begin to see that it would be an impossible task to literally police all of our thoughts, to be sit there and fully aware of every single thought that crosses our consciousness, that crosses our minds. But there is a way that we can begin to police our own thoughts and begin to see where on the spectrum they are. So at any given moment, we can tune into our own inner energy and we can just simply ask ourselves, how am I feeling? If you're feeling good, it means that you're having source aligned thoughts and they're aligning you with the energy or the powerhouse energy of source. And they are then keep having those thoughts because that's what's going to keep building your life and improving your life. However, if you ask the same question, how am I doing? How am I feeling? And the answer is, I don't feel so good. Not doing so good. Then it means that you're having void aligned thoughts, and that needs to become a call to action to begin to move ourselves along the spectrum towards source energy again. So how can we do that? Well, we can do that by engaging in thought processes that will help us to start feeling more positive. So things like giving gratitude is a powerful way, because it's impossible to give gratitude and not love what you're giving gratitude for. So as you're deeply tapping into the energy of gratitude, it's powerfully shifting your vibration, your frequency, where you are on the scale of consciousness. It's moving you from maybe a contracted state of being, which is the void energy, into your expanded state of being, which is your source energy. So gratitude is a very powerful way that you can very easily and very quickly move your frequency and vibration in a very succinct, easy way to do it. So really just sitting down, writing, and it isn't enough to give it lip service, like I'm so happy and grateful, and then you're not really feeling it. The trick here is to allow yourself to feel it, because if you're feeling it, the byproduct of your thoughts, and you're holding the frequency, because you're not going to feel it unless you're holding the frequency. So if you're truly holding the frequency, you will feel it, because the divine feedback matrix, as we send out our thoughts, Skylar teaches that our emotions are not actually our own, which is a huge surprise to me, because I consider myself a very emotional person and feel everything very deeply as an empath. So to be told that my emotions were not my own was a huge surprise to me, but it makes perfect sense. So I want to explain it to you. So as you send out a thought out into the universe, the thought is bounced back basically to you, and it's bounced back with a signal. So you send your thought as a signal. Now we know that your thoughts actually leave your brain, because we can measure that there is a transmission from the mind. And so we know that the thoughts have the power to leave the brain. So as we're thinking, our thoughts are actually leaving our mind. And so the next question, the metaphysical question becomes, well, where do they go? What happens with them? If we send this electrical signal out into the universe, where does that signal actually go? Well, Skylar teaches that it goes out into the cosmos and is then returned to us. So it's mirrored back to us. As it's mirrored back to us, so our thought goes out, as it's mirrored back to us, a new frequency is generated based off your frequency, your thought frequency. So your thought frequency goes out, the new frequency is generated, and it is telling you important information, your proximity to source. So if you send out a great thought, you feel really good, like I'm a divine being of light, right? That's a beautiful thing to say to yourself. I'm a divine being of light. You will feel, if you try that, you can try that right now at home. You will feel your energy field expanding and feeling really light as a result. When you do that, the feeling that you get back is coming from the divine feedback matrix. So the divine feedback matrix sends you a signal back, and the signal creates an emotional response in your body. And that emotional response in your body, if you say, I'm a divine feeling of a divine being of light, and it feels really good in your body, what happens is that signal is saying that is your truth. Your proximity to source is very close with that statement. So it's a very true statement. However, if we say something else like, I'm not enough, and we say that, we send that thought out, we will get very quickly the feeling back, and it will not feel very good in our body. So if we're tuned into our body and attuned to our body's frequency, we'll begin to think, our bodies will go, that doesn't feel nice. Well, that's the divine feedback matrix saying you have now moved away from source. You have moved away from the proximity of source. You may want to actually rethink that statement because it's actually not true. And so we can always tell truth from falsehood by how it feels in our energy system and how it feels in our energy bodies. So as we're moving through life, this is happening all the time. It's happening naturally right now. It's happening. Our frequencies are bouncing backwards and forwards. We're having this. We're in divine communication with the larger part of ourselves, which is the universe, and we're constantly in this communication. However, many of us don't recognize that we're in a dialogue or communication. So we end up getting very stuck on the emotions instead. So we're like, I don't feel good. And then what we do is we do more stuff that doesn't feel good because we have forgotten that the law of attraction is always in action. So like energy attracts like energy. So I don't feel good. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to eat this. I'm going to eat half a box of chocolates and drink half a bottle of wine or something like that. And of course we do that, and again it's a more void aligned state of energy. So now we're mad at ourselves for eating the chocolate, and we're really pissed at ourselves for drinking the wine, and we're using those two to beat ourselves up. So we're now in what I would call a downward void spiral. We're moving downwards in the spiral of creation, and as we move further and further and further down in the spiral, life gets darker, it gets more difficult, and we start to engage with struggle. However, we can at any given moment stop that downward spiral by switching up the thoughts that we're thinking into source aligned thoughts, which will create the ability to move up the spiral. And as we move up the spiral, if you imagine a spiral that narrows at the bottom, which is void, so everything becomes smaller, contracted, more difficult, darker, because the little spiral's going in. And then as you imagine, as you go up through the top and you're connecting with source at the top, source is wider and it's bigger, so more light can come in and you can see more because you are appreciating more of the available energy when we're at source. So as we're moving through these energies of source and void, and as we're moving through these teachings of source and void, we can begin to realize that the spectrum is not a random set of events. It's really responding to us, and we're in this open dialogue with the universe. And our emotions are our guidance system. They're a system for us to be guided by. And if we connect deeply in with our emotional self and we allow ourselves to be guided by our emotions, we can begin to start actually navigating life with greater skill. So what happens is that when you're experiencing void aligned emotions, aka I don't feel good, that's the first agent on the scene that arrives into your consciousness, agent I don't feel good. When you are experiencing that, then that is your strong indication to begin to shift things up, and your strong indication that you need to change life up a little bit, and that we can't keep going in the way that we've been going. So it's a call to action. It's not a call to go and do more void aligned stuff. That's the call to action. That moment is that call to action to engage higher consciousness and be choosing. So we have two states of energy always in operation. We have the void and we have source. So the void is reactive. So what we want to do is, in order to disengage void energy, it's an on-off system. So if source is on in your life, the void is off. If the void is on in your life, you can bet your bottom dollar that source is off in your life. And so we work in this very on-off system. So what's really important is that we have to begin to actively look at the natures of the energy. So void energy is very reactive. You're going to be reactive when you are connecting and aligning to void energy. So connecting and aligning to void energy is a very reactive energy. And how that will appear is that you'll just rely on your old conditioning. Now, if you want to know what your old conditioning is going to deliver to you, all you need to do is look at your immediate family around you, your closest family. So either parents or anybody that raised you. If you look at them, you're going to see the sum total of what your conditioning can bring you. And it is until you become willing to engage in deeper conscious choice that you can actually override or overwrite the conditioned. So reactive conditioning, it will rely on conditioning, right? So for instance, if you lived in a very reactive family, a very volatile family, so when something bad happened, your parents had a big rant about it, chances are that that's also going to be your response to when something happens in your life, when something you perceive as going wrong, or when something kind of blows up and doesn't work in the way that you wanted it to work. You're going to rely back on your conditioned response. So your conditioned response is pretty much what your parents did, or what your guardians did, or the people who raised you. So that's a very reactive response. And the reactive response is usually the first response on the scene. It immediately arrives in, right? Because it requires not a lot of brain power to get there, because your synapses in your brain are conditioned that way, and that's what's happening in your brain. So our job as being conscious beings and awakened beings who are working on awakening, beings who are choosing differently and choosing to live a conscious life where we are awake to life, we've got to interrupt that pattern. We've got to see that moment and seize the moment and say, actually, wait a minute, let me think about this. The moment that you place conscious choice into the equation, the moment you take that pause, that breath to say, okay, let me not just react straight away to this. Let me choose how I want to respond. So we have reactive and responsive. When we're choosing to be responsive and we're choosing the response that we're doing, we're powerfully aligning with source energy. And what you're going to find is that any issues or problems that you're dealing with, if you deal with it in this way more conscious manner of choosing your responses, life's going to get a whole lot easier, lighter, and brighter for you. Usually what gets us into trouble is our old conditioning, the old way of being. And so one of the things that I love to tell people is that we cannot go somewhere new while holding on to old behaviors. So we need to alter our behavior ultimately. That needs to be the first thing that we do if we want to really align our lives to source, and we want to have a lighter, brighter, more abundant, joy-filled lives. If that's what we're aiming for here, then we can't be relying on our old way of conditioning, because our old way of conditioning has delivered life thus far. And if life thus far is rocking and working for you, then keep doing what you're doing. But if it's not rocking and working for you, then we need different strategies for shifting that. And the best strategy that I know is to employ conscious choice, because it immediately connects us with source energy. Because source energy is the essence of consciousness, and the void is the essence of unconsciousness, being asleep, being a slave to the system, if you like. So we want to transmute that energy and move that energy powerfully away. Then what we're going to do is begin to create a powerful shift by moving into a response, a conscious choice response. So having a conscious choice response is as simple as just choosing what you're going to do next. And if you give yourself that grace and that pause and not immediately react to what's going on in the outer world, and you choose how you're going to respond in the inner world, you immediately take back your power and you take back control, which then gives you the power and control to alter the outcome. When we are reacting, we are not connecting to power and we are not connecting to control. In fact, our response is really the epitome of an out of control response because we just let our conditioning dictate it for us. So, of course, we have less power, we have less control, and we feel that deeply in our bodies. And we feel like life's spinning out of control. We feel like the world can maybe perhaps be against us. Whereas when we choose our conscious responses, we realize that the world is actually happening for us. So it's quite a big shift. So each of these levels of the void energy and the source energy, they all represent different levels of consciousness. So if you are interested in knowing more about this and you're interested in exploring this, where I teach this in my world is I teach it inside the Lightweb program. So the Lightweb program, we go deep into source and void. We have a 9-step process called the 333 magic framework, and it will literally invite magic into your life and make your life more magical than it is right now. So we have 3 insights for your soul. These are deep insights for your soul and for your consciousness of your soul. Then we have 3 concepts for your mind, and that when you adopt these concepts, that they really start to put you into control and mastery of your life. And then we have 3 physical steps for your human body in order to realize your dreams in life and be able to become, like, really step into the role of being a sacred creator. One of the big things with Lightweb is as we move and shift consciousness and as we move you into higher level of consciousness, your natural spiritual gifts that everybody has, everybody is intuitive, everybody is mediumistic, everybody has these very natural intuitive gifts. As we move into the higher levels of consciousness, they become activated. So you become more intuitive as a result, and you will find yourself listening to your guidance system more. Your guidance system is already working today. There's times where you know that you've not felt good, and the guidance system is literally telling you the information. You are now moving away from source energy. And you've had times in your life where you're feeling very, very good indeed. In fact, you're maybe even feeling pleased with life. And that is the energy telling you that you're moving very, very close to source energy in that moment. So that's how source and void works. I hope you've enjoyed this, and we'll make sure we'll link the program to Lightweb below. And I will speak to you soon. Bye now.